Hey friends, welcome to the live Sample Ox Mystery Sample Challenge where we will unravel a mystery product using our taste buds. Here's how it works. We have two guests on the program, a challenger and a category expert. Our challenger will be tasked with tasting and eventually guessing the mystery product from three different possible descriptions. They'll be joined by our expert guest who created and chose the product we will be tasting today. So today's expert guests and beers come from Wild East Brewing in Brooklyn, New York. We're really excited to have them and all of you joining in from home. Thank you guys for being here. So now, if you are following along from home, you all have a mixed pack of beer from Wild East. One of these beers is an unlabeled mystery beer. If you haven't already, go ahead and log in, register, and submit your tasting notes in Sampleox for the mystery beer now. We will be using the leaderboard in Sampleox to give away the grand prize to the top registered taster. And today's grand prize is a big one. It is a $50 gift card to Wild East, which will get you a lot of yummy beer, and a personal wine consultation with today's challenger, who we're going to be meeting in a minute. All right, so now let's meet our participants. First, our moderator, Victoria. Victoria is coming to us from Bend, Oregon, where it has been cold up until like today, where I think it's like 80 or something. So Victoria, do you have any spring activity plans planned?
I think like everyone else, I'm really excited to get out and have some libations in the sunshine and explore some patios, But I'm also looking forward to hearing from you guys in the chat today. I'll be hanging out there with you all and giving away prizes and also getting any of the questions you have over to the group. So feel free to drop those questions in the chat and I'll send them over to Lindsay and the team. Thanks, Lindsay.
Thanks for being here, Victoria. It's always a pleasure. Next, we have our expert guest, Brett Taylor. Brett is from Wild East. He is a co-owner and head brewer. He hand brewed the beer we're going to be tasting today, and he's going to be guiding us through the flavor notes and giving out clues along the way to our challenger. Thanks so much for being here, Brett.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So you opened Wild East in the fall of 2019. What was the inspiration behind Wild East?
We started brewing then. Because of the pandemic, I don't want to say we fully opened. We actually haven't fully opened, but we're making our way. The original idea was to do Belgian-inspired farmhouse ales. Barrel-aged, food-aged saisons, grisettes, barrel-aged sour beer. In the sort of like lambic in the lambic vein, but then things we spun out from there. We got into lagers.
It was quite the time to start a brewery.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so before you started the brewery, you actually worked as a geographer for the Wall Street Journal, which is just fascinating to me. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that, career entails and how it shaped your view of the world kind of as you moved into opening a brewery?
Sure. My job was to make news maps at the Wall Street Journal. Anything from something happened here, put a dot on the map to indicate where that place is. Up to parsing large data sets that would be shown spatially, so that you can see geographic similarities or differences. I would say the biggest way that has informed me as a brewer is that they always say that Pilsner came from the Czech Republic because the water there is really soft and we were able to make beer. You didn't need to bring down the pH on it, whereas the water in Dublin is a different way, and so you use the dark malts that added acidity to brought that pH down to make it so that you could actually make the beer and get and everything would sort of work the right way. So that, I guess, understanding sort of the geography and how that fit into it, I feel like I understood that. It made a better grasp on how that all came together.
Yeah, very cool. Just kind of having a connection with like the space and how that kind of informs flavor, which sounds kind of like terroir. So,
Right.
speaking of terroir, let's meet our challenger who comes from the wine industry. So, today's challenger is our friend Jake Lewis, who is making his second appearance on the Mystery Sample Challenge. He's an advanced sommelier, and he's held a whole bunch of different hospitality and fine dining posts, including as the wine and beverage director at Momofuku in New York. Jake is now the founder of the aptly named Jake Lewis Wine Services, which we're going to hear about in a minute. Jake, thank you for being willing to come back on the Mystery Sample Challenge.
Thanks for having me back. I'm very happy to be here.
It's good to see you. Yeah. So you moved to Brooklyn 6 years ago, specifically to follow your passion for wine and hospitality. What makes New York a unique location for wine?
Honestly, it's where it's the hub. Like everything that comes from Europe basically has to come through New York. And so being the central distribution hub where all the boats land in New York or New Jersey, and then all the fine dining and like really excellent restaurants are here. And so they get first dibs. And for me, I'm basically a kid in a candy store. And so when we had the opportunity to move here, we looked at where we could go across the country, and we looked at New York. It was just like, if I'm going to go and advance my career in wine, this is the place. And that was kind of it. That was the decision. So it's been great so far.
Yeah, nice. When we were talking about this before, I kind of asked a little bit about like, well, I live in California, so I'm like, well, why didn't you go to California? But that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of the hub. It's where everything's going on.
Yeah.
So craft beer, it was born in the 1970s out of Sonoma, out of the Sonoma Valley in California, with a brewery called New Albion. And they kind of started this revolution. They paved the way for breweries like Sierra Nevada to open shortly thereafter them. So this kind of all actually happened after the modern American wine kind of movement started in the Napa Valley. So they were just right next door to one another. So I've got to think like the brewers and winemakers were all sharing inspiration at that point, as both of those industries kind of started to expand. So Jake, to kind of like tie that all together, I'm kind of curious in 2 minutes or less, if you could do this in 2 minutes, I would be very impressed. Can you describe how the Napa Valley kind of became the center for modern wine production?
Yeah, that's a challenge. Well, I think one of my favorite things about wine is that it takes a lot of good beer to make good wine. So it kind of all ties together that way. But as far as modern Napa Valley wine, like it all started in 1976 with the Paris tasting. And this was a massively important tasting in which Stephen Spurrier, who actually just passed away a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, he had a blind tasting in which Napa Valley Chardonnays and Cabernets and Oregon Pinot Noirs were put up against the very best of France. And we're talking the first growth Bordeaux's and best Burgundies, and they spanked the French. They took top seats in all categories, and that was the beginning. And since then, that put a lot of eyes into Napa Valley. And we had foreign investment come in, look at Napa Valley, and start buying land, as well as other people looking at the success of the area and investing in the land. Then we have the rise of wine critics. So especially with the 1982 vintage of Bordeaux and the rise of Wine Advocate and Wine Spectator, you start to see people start to collect wine as a commodity and start to see value in Napa Valley, and the prices start to go up. And then we have phylloxera, which devastates the industry in the 90s, but they come back and after they replant. And the biggest vintage that really starts to set the new trend towards new ripe winemaking is 1997. In 1997, there was such a massive crop that some wineries picked such a massive and perfect condition crop that some wineries picked all their fruit, fermented it all, and then picked the rest of it that they didn't have room for. There was 20% more crop than they had space for. So that gave us like the super ultra ripe wines that we're kind of just coming out of. And that really picked up in the 2000s. Then we had the financial crisis in 2008, which then kind of led to the new California movement where people are pulling back on oak and opulence. And now we have natural wine making its impact now. So Napa Valley, only accounts for 4% of production in California, but this series of events over time is why it accounts for 20% of the revenue that wine generates in California. And so it's quite wild once you start stringing it all together. I think that was 2 minutes.
That's really interesting. That was great. Yeah, that was pretty close. Yeah, when I think about like natural wine, I actually think about New York, because it seems like in order to like really start a movement, you have to get New York on board, and New York like just really took to natural wine. The first time I tried it was in New York City. I'm like, what is this crazy stuff? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that you made that happen in 2 minutes. Okay, so now we know the flow. We've met our guests. But before we get started, we usually like to play a little game to kind of give us a mental warm up. So today, I don't know if you guys know this, but for you sports fans out there, today's the NFL draft. So we figured that we would do a draft of our own. Today's draft is inspired by a discussion that we've been having internally for a few years. It was inspired from a podcast one of our coworkers listens to. So the draft that I want to run today is, which animals would you want to have on your team if you were to go into a fight? So we'll each choose 3, and I'll let you know when your turn is. We'll kind of do a little snake draft. And of course, I'm going to give myself the advantage, and I'm going to go first. But I'll go with all you guys. So if I was taking, my top pick for the top animal to take into a fight would probably have to be the peregrine falcon. I don't know if you know this, but the peregrine falcon is the fastest animal. They can like zoom down and they can, grab their prey, and they, they're very fast, and they're very lithe. And I'm not really sure if they're like burly to like, do any kind of like pecking damage, but they're fast. And I think that I'm going to need that on my team. So now that I have the peregrine falcon, you can't take it, Jake, but who do you want on your team?
That's a great pick. I'm going to go, I have one I'm saving for later, but I'm going to go with the elephant. Because elephants are dangerous. I don't know if you've ever been in Africa on a safari and had an elephant chase you in a car, but I've come close, and it is terrifying, and they will mess you up. So I'm going to stick with an elephant to start with. So you can't have my elephant now.
Wow. I really want to hear that story one of these days. So, Brett, have you been chased by a large animal? And if so, do you want that animal on your team?
I've been chased. The biggest animal that's ever chased me was probably a human, but the scariest animal was probably a wild pig in Florida. I don't want that animal on my team because I was able to outrun both the human and the wild pig. So yeah, I'm going to go with because I believe in speed. Speed is what I build my team on. Speed doesn't have to necessarily be size. And I can definitely steer clear of the elephant, though probably not the peregrine falcon. Would be the cheetah. I actually really love cheetahs. They're beautiful animals.
Yeah. That's
small and gentle as the big cats go.
It's a very good pick. So Brett, we're gonna snake this back around. So you actually get one more choice right now, and then we'll go back to Jake.
Interesting. So I had a cousin who used to work in foreign services, and she told me a story about I remember it was in Egypt or where it was. She went for one of the countries, it might have been Burma. She went for dinner. And on the menu was cobra, and the way that they prepared the cobra was they threw it into a cage with a mongoose, and the meat was much better whenever the blood had been like coursing in the animal. So, but the mongoose won every single time. I don't know that much about a mongoose, but I think a cobra is super scary. I'm kind of like Indiana Jones in that way, so I'm gonna go for that mongoose.
Wow,
that is an unlikely pick, and it's pretty perfect.
All
right, so Brett has a cheetah and a mongoose. Jake, who are you going to add to your team to fight those animals?
Well, Oh man, that's tough. So I was gonna pick a snake, but I was actually thinking maybe I should just do the full Jungle Book, but that's a little easy. I think, oh, man, okay. This will help. I want to hang on to my ringer for last. So I'm gonna go with all right, I'm gonna go with the hyena. So, we've all seen the hyenas in Lion King, and they're very cute as puppies, if you ever see the puppies. But they're just the jaw strength of a hyena that can crack bone like butter. That's what I want. And they're very cunning and devilish and little bastards. So I think like that makes them perfect for it. So yeah, I think I'll go with the hyena.
Wow, I had no idea that they had such an intense jaw. So I'm going to really try to pick, I'm going to try to find what Jake's saving animal is, but I don't know if I can. And if only I knew where this battle was taking place, if I had a geographer to point to a map and tell me where this was going to be. Because if it was being fought at the sea, I would probably want some sort of a sea creature. But if it was being fought on land, I would want some sort of land creature. So if I could make these animals a little bit more vicious, I would probably choose something in between. So I'm going to choose the muskrat because I'm going to try to train the muskrat to be on both land and sea. They can do both land and sea. They can dive down like pretty deep. They can dive like 15 feet underwater. And if they can be kind of scratchy, then maybe the muskrat's gonna be my guy.
I love it.
And now I have this. Yeah, this is my third one and my last one, and I'm gonna try to find Jake's. I feel like I'm losing on like the strength. The elephant is kind of a big animal. So I think I'm going to go for a gorilla. I really can't imagine a stronger animal, and opposable thumbs. It's kind of, if we can throw stuff and grab stuff, like we're going to be a good team. So I'm going to stick with my peregrine falcon, the muskrat, and the gorilla. So Jake,
good play.
It's now your turn for your third and final pick.
All right. Well, first, I want to make sure when you're training your muskrat, I want to see a video of that. That should be the next live event is you training and us drinking while you're training your muskrat. Okay, so my animal, the third animal, is vicious. She is she looks soft and cuddly, and she looks very sweet when she's sleeping. But the moment you pick her up and take her to a vet, she is insane to the point where she's howling, to the point where people are like coming around the corner and be like, is she okay? Is everybody okay? And she's actually been labeled, sort of like Elaine from Seinfeld has her chart labeled as like a problem patient. My cat Abby is an attack cat, and she is labeled she's been labeled that at 3 vets, and so she's a little vicious monster. And so I think that's my ringer. She'll take down that muskrat. The mongoose better be afraid, and she'll ride the elephant to victory. So that's all I'm saying.
Wow. And be kind of cute and cuddly when you're not in battle, which that's got to fill your soldiers' souls.
Yeah, we took a nap earlier.
All right. That's pretty big. That's a good team that you've got. Brett, who's your final animal?
Well, I can't go with my dog because she's just a cuddly baby puppy with a huge howitzer of a voice, but she's not tough enough for fights. So your muskrat got me thinking because we had muskrats at my grandparents' country house. Well, so their home. They were home. It was out in the country when I was growing up, and basically there was. But the other animal we had there was the snapping turtle, and we were trying to figure out why it was that there were these one-legged ducks. Like why they're one-legged ducks, and then finally my grandfather figured out that it was because we had these snapping turtles in the pond. So my dad was like, "Okay, we're going to take care of the snapping turtle." So my dad goes and gets a pistol when he walks out, and he walks up to the snapping turtle that's just sitting there on the beach, and he shoots it, and the bullet bounces off. So he has to go in and get like an M2 carbine rifle, and he gets down in his like I was in Vietnam stance on the ground and like puts a like major round through the shell of this thing. So that's why I chose the snapping turtle, because bullets bounce off of it and it bites the legs off of things.
I love it.
Wow. Wow, that's really good. Yeah, you've got the armor. So that's I'm sure, like, now that we're talking about all these animals, I'm sure just, the modern warfare things have been crafted from these animals, I'm sure.
Right, I'm sure.
Wow. I have no idea who would win in this fight, but I think we all have pretty good teams. I've got to say mine's probably the weakest. The muskrat training thing wasn't that well thought through. So
I still want to see the video.
Work, but I've got the peregrine.
Yeah, the peregrine's strong.
That'll be the next thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
all right. Well, I
pick.
feel warmed up, and yeah, thanks. I'm ready to start drinking beer after that. Jake, I'm sure you are as well. So Jake, you can go ahead and start evaluating the visual aspects of this beer.
All right.
And so go ahead and pour it out, start evaluating. And remember, at the end of our full evaluation, you're going to be tasked with guessing our mystery beer from 3 different possible descriptions. So I'm going to read the descriptions now, so you consider them while evaluating. And for those of you online, go ahead and keep them in your noodle when you're evaluating your beers, or post-evaluation. So the first possible description of the beer that you're tasting is, at 3.5% ABV, this dark mild has chocolate, cocoa powder, vanilla, and toast flavors with a very light bitterness and body. Or is it number 2? At 4.5%, this English brown has caramel and nutty flavors with a light bitterness and full body. Or at 5.2% ABV, this American brown has brown spice, black pepper, and green tea flavors with a moderate bitterness and full body. So as you're doing your evaluation, keep those in your mind. And at the end, you will be tasked with guessing which one it is. All right, so let's go ahead and bring Jake back and hear what he's seeing. So Jake, what did you see?
Well, it's definitely brown. So I think it's like, it has, it's not clear. The beer's clear if you hold it up to light, but it's not like, you can't read through it from the top. It has it's brown with a slight like burnished amber core and a nice foam, slightly off-white foam. Sort of reminds me of like a coffee crema. Yeah, and it looks delicious. These 3 descriptions are all brown ales, and that's going to be, or dark, and that's going to make this really challenging. So thanks, Brett.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yes, indeed. Pay close attention to those flavors. So we'll get you into the flavors pretty soon. All right. So Jake, we want to know how the personal wine buying process goes. I know that that's what you're doing for a living, and honestly, I don't really know what is all entailed with that. So let's use some beers that Brett recently made as a starting point for us. So the beers that Brett was just telling me about are sangria inspired. And it's my understanding that there was one made out of Chardonnay must and one out of Sangiovese must.
Right.
So Brett, what did those beers taste like?
So we started with a Berliner Weiss base, so like a Fuder fermented Berliner Weiss. It was about 4% alcohol, and then I added about 160 pounds of must to each. I think I did about 200 gallons of the beer, and then each of them got some orange puree, and then I added some apple puree to the Tinto, the Sangiovese one, and then to Blanco I added some apple. So I added some peach. And so I wanted these to have, it's kind of like when you make sangria, there's no like hard and fast rule as to what fruit you put in. It's kind of like what you have. But I always feel like I get orange and apple in a red one. And I feel like I always get like peach and sort of like stone fruit stuff in a white one. So we kind of started with those, and we kind of played with it. But it was really fun. It's like, the thing is, like, I could make this beer over and over and never make it the same way.
Yeah. Sounds delicious.
I love it. It sounds really delicious. Yeah, I want to try it. So, Jake, knowing what you know about these flavor profiles, for those who liked these beers, how would you direct them to wines that they might enjoy?
Yeah, so that's always the challenge. So the trick is always interpreting what people are asking for and making that into what they're looking for in wine. And with this, like I'm thinking like Berliner base, the first thing I come to is like a nice bright acidity, mouth-watering acidity in the wine. And then with the different musts, like, and you're adding with those fruit purees, that is sort of the same lines that I'm looking for in terms of the flavor of the wine. And since you have Sangiovese and Chardonnay must, that's usually a good start. And so if I'm looking at Chardonnay with, what was the purees you put in the Chardonnay?
That was orange and peach.
Orange and peach. So cool. So orange and peach flavors to me indicate a warmer climate that gives you a riper flavor profile from a Chardonnay. So I would look at something perhaps from the Americas or Australia, maybe without as much oak. So you're seeing those stone fruit and characteristics really shine through. And then what did you add to the Sangiovese must one?
It's orange and apple.
Orange and apple. So that's a little trickier, but I mean, that to me, I'm looking for basically orange and apple. I can see those flavors in Sangiovese. So you see like that tart or like dried orange peel. Apple's a little bit more challenging, but you start to look for like complementary flavors like cranberries that Sangiovese often presents. And then to tie it all up, like sangria is about drinkability, and like you kind of want to just go to the park and put a bottle down. I may or may not speak from experience, but so you look for that like lighter alcohol from wines, looking for something no more than like 14% alcohol, which would be nice. And then and kind of tailoring it from there. So like I can look at Sangioveses that are a little lighter and juicier in style, or Grenache that are juicier and lighter in style, and Chardonnays that don't see a bunch of oak but are from warm climates. And that's sort of where we navigate with that. So yeah, makes it fun.
Cool.
That's great. So that's how it's done.
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's
kind of like
it's all about
Chardonnay for those.
Yeah, it's all about showing people what is out there, because like I know it's out there, but you know, walking into a wine shop or looking at a wine list and it's just a wall of wine, that's terrifying. So that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. So Brett, I'm sure people have had a similar experience walking into a brewery if it's maybe their first time, like with craft beer or something. So when somebody walks into the brewery and goes to order and leads with like, oh, I don't really like beer, how do you kind of guide them to the right beer?
Yeah, no, I mean that I literally had this conversation today. I was doing an interview with Voice of America, and you know, the interviewer did not have a lot of experience with beer, and was sort of somebody who either thought of it as like fizzy yellow and bitter, and I was like, let me take you for a walk. So I find out what they do like. Are you a cider drinker? Are you a wine drinker? And then it gets easy from there, because like even though our saisons are fairly bitter, once you've had something that took a ride in a red or white wine, or in the case of one of our beers, both, we just blended red and white wine aged saison. With all that acidity, the Brettanomyces, it's a different thing. Like the bitterness kind of fades away. It's so much more in balance with the oak tannins and the acidity and the malt flavors. So I take them to the tart beers. I take them to the fruited Berliners. You know, you put a couple of each of those in front of them, and you're going to find something they like. To me, I've really never found somebody who doesn't like beer unless they actually just can't physically drink beer for one reason or another. There's so many. It's such a broad range of styles. Like you know, from a Belgian quad to a Berliner Weiss to a Helles. You know, like. And to a light American lager, there's just, you know, that's only a few corners of the universe. Like they're so different that there's something for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jake, is there a wine for everybody as well?
Oh, 100%. I often tell people, like, when I get all the time people that say, oh, I don't like Chardonnay or I don't like whatever. And to me, that's basically saying you don't like cookies because you've only had oatmeal raisin.
Yeah.
It's like you can't dismiss an entire category or even subtype with just your one experience. And so there's always a wine for somebody, but it is just figuring it out. And sometimes you have to taste a bunch of stuff to figure out what you don't like to get there. So, yeah.
Yeah. What a fun, interesting process to get to, it's an interesting flavor journey.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and sum up what we have. We have a beer that looks pretty brown. And it could so far be any of the three that I've given you guys. So before we go ahead and start tasting, let's go ahead and check in with Victoria. Victoria, what's going on in audience land?
Thanks, Lindsay. Well, the audiences agree, right? That it's a nice kind of rich brown color, but it's also bright. There's no haze, no particulate. And they also got pretty into that last game. So I wanted to come back and throw in some of those things that they were really excited about. They had like so much knowledge about hyenas that I'm just kind of shocked that, like, what's happening in New York that everyone knows so much about hyenas. Like, I don't think that's one of the things, the Central Park Zoo. But a lot of hyena facts. So that definitely makes their team. A big emphasis for the cone snail. I think they said it carries toxins, so that was totally one of them. I think that's a good like sneak attack animal. And some of the other honorable mentions are like great white shark and kangaroos that didn't come up. So I think they could definitely have a good team. But I think a lot of them are ready to like bring down some of their more stubborn moms and see if Brett can find them a beer to drink. So hopefully he's up for the challenge.
Great. Yeah. We'll have to get him connected with all the moms out there. Victoria, never mind. I was going to ask if there were any questions, but we can save the questions until the end. So Jake, you just did overall flavor and you were able to taste it. Hopefully you have a little bit of a better idea for what it could potentially be.
Yeah.
So let's see. So, but before we, before we go into all of that, I kind of want to keep talking to you guys. So Brett, when building Wild East, you set out to kind of brew in the Belgian tradition, like you had mentioned. You were focusing on mixed culture fermentations, barrel aging, but since opening, you've become known as a really good lager brewery, and you apply a lot of those kind of traditional lager brewing practices to create your beers. I kind of found this really amusing because the Belgians and the Germans don't really have a lot of the same traditions when it comes to beer. So what kind of prompted that shift, and what challenges do you face at the brewery with upholding those traditions?
Yeah, it's funny because when I think about it, it's like with Germans, it's like there's one way, and with Belgians, it's like every way is cool. I've thought about this a little bit, and I think the answer is that I'm a process brewer. I enjoy the process of making a mixed fermentation beer. I also enjoy the process of making a double decocted Czech amber lager. So when it comes down to it, like I'm trying to make American interpretations of traditional styles, and that the lager, I should have seen it. I should have known that I was going to fall into the lager thing. The COVID lockdown gave me more time to produce these beers, and as a result, like they just kind of came out, and it's been great. I've surprised myself a little bit of how happy I've been. There's room for improvement on every single beer, but it's a good start. And to get to the last part of your question, separate parts. I got separate gaskets, separate hoses, separate sides of the cellar. In the words of The Offspring, you got to keep them separated. Just like I have different kegs for mixed fermentation beers. It's just like they live in the same universe, but they don't interact at all.
Yes, good. So you have like the red buckets that kind of you use for all of your mixed fermentation stuff, and
Yeah, it's
everything
blue
else
and white,
is
but yeah,
green, like the
yeah,
different colors.
exactly. Yeah. And
Yes.
like literally physically, like the mixed fermentation stuff stays on the other side of the cellar. Like they just don't cross the line. So
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah, that's good.
It's like the DMZ. They're just like you can't cross. So
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
start.
it always made me a little bit nervous. I used to work for New Belgium, and that always made me a little nervous. Like, oh, there's all the wood stuff over here, and it's right next to our clean beers. So Brett, you mentioned decoction mashing, and
Yes.
I'm wondering if you could, quickly in less than 2 minutes, go through the steps that go into that, and kind of describe what that does to your beer flavor.
Yeah, so you so basically it's in the process of a step mash, which is you mash in at one temperature, then you step up to another temperature, you step up to another temperature. Usually you're either coming in at an acid rest, which I don't normally do. It's normally I start with a protein rest, which helps to clarify the beer in the later stages.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And so usually, like with our German style beers, at one point from one of those steps to the next, we'll pull what is called a decoction, and that's taking a portion of the mash over to the kettle and boiling it. And the boiling does a few things. It stops the enzymatic activity, and it creates some Maillard reactions, and it allows and then we use that whole thing to bring the temperature up to the next step. So you're getting a smoother mouthfeel. You're getting a rounder bodied beer, and it gives it. There's a complexity to that simplicity that literally these beers have one malt in them that gives them. They're greater than some of their parts when you use these, and they're not used that much anymore. Yeah. All the homebrew literature tells you don't do it because you don't need to. But the best lager breweries in the country and in the world are doing it. So why would I not?
Right, that's good sound logic, and that's like the most processy process that I think that I could ever imagine. So if you're a process guy, that's got to be a fun thing for you to do.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and bring Jake back and hear what he tasted, what he smelled, what he tasted, what he felt, all of the things. See if he's getting closer. So Jake, what did you smell? What did you taste? What did you feel?
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to as soon as I took a whiff, like the first note that came to mind was like Dutch processed cocoa powder. So just like that definite cocoa powder, that chocolatey note, but it's not like super sweet milk chocolate, but that sort of more less sweet, drier, if you will, I guess, cocoa powder. And then like there's like a slight nuttiness, and I think maybe a little bit of vanilla. It kind of reminds me of like a really simple chocolate ice cream, to be frank, like that hint of vanilla, cocoa powder, just real simple. And then on the palate, it's just so light. Like this is like summertime, drink it anytime kind of brown stuff. And I'm very happy about that because, in Brooklyn, it's getting warm and air conditioners aren't on yet if you have one. So this makes it quite nice. So it's definitely narrowed some things down for me. Like it doesn't have there's not a lot of sharp bitterness or like hoppy bitterness or like green flavors to me. It's just kind of like light, gently bitter, and really cocoa-y to me. Yeah. So.
All right. Yeah, it sounds like you're starting to put together the puzzle. So Jake, when we come up with questions for the SampleOx Mystery Sample Challenge, we bounce stuff around quite a bit at Draft Lab. And we always kind of ask ourselves, like, what would we want to know from our participants? And one of the things that came up for us was that you've probably seen more first dates than like anyone in the world. Being in hospitality for a long time, you've probably seen a whole bunch of awkward situations. So I'm hoping that you can kind of help us out. What are some do's and don'ts when you're on a date, when you're ordering wine, when you're drinking wine, when you're interacting with the som? And what have you seen people do? Is like smelling the cork a thing, or what kind of question should I ask? So I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that.
It's there. I got a good story for you, but I'll start with this. A couple of do's and don'ts. One, you should probably try to find something that both you and your date would like to drink. Don't just pick something that you want to drink and then they're out in the cold. You definitely don't show off. Just don't, because you're going to embarrass yourself. Don't be like, hey, I'm an expert. I'm going to pick out this fancy bottle of wine, and then they're not going to care. Or you're going to be wrong, and it's going to be bad. So use the sommelier. I think one of the best moves you can make is to have somebody else help you if there is a sommelier or wine person, because then then it's out of your hands, and if it goes poorly, you don't have to take the blame for it. And I think one of the trickiest things is people don't necessarily want to play their cards when it comes to how much you want to spend. So the trick is always to like slide your finger over to a price point and be like, I want to spend something like this. And then the wine person can help you find some selections. The big thing that one of my favorite stories is don't pour Coke into your date's fancy wine. Just don't do it. This was amazing. I was working for Momofuku at the restaurant in Canada, and we had this woman that came in occasionally, and she was fantastic. She was a great guest. She knew how to eat. She knew how to drink, and she brought a date. And so she sits down, and they sit, and they started talking, and then she orders a bottle of wine for me. So she does that trick. She's like, "This is what I want," and so she spends money on it, probably a couple $100 in this bottle of wine. And she orders a seafood tower. And let's see how it goes. Cool. So bring the wine, show it to her, pour the wine. Excellent. It is an awesome wine, and it should be for $200+. And then seafood tower comes, and we drop the seafood tower. Her date says, "Hey, can I have a Coke?" I'm like, sure. I'm thinking, yeah, he's just gonna have a little side guy of a Coke. No, that's cool. You can do that. And then he proceeds to take the ice from the glass, put it into his glass of Pinot Noir, and pour Coke on it. And I'm just like, what? Like, bro, like, do what you want. You can totally do that at home, but this is a date, and you're throwing it away. And sure enough, like, they didn't order any more food. She was like, I think I'm good. And she drank most of the wine quickly, so he couldn't ruin it. And that was it. That was the end of that date. And that was just like, bro, you messed up. Because she was a catch, and yeah, I don't remember if she came in again, but he never did, and that was a bad one. That was really, don't do that.
I didn't even know that like wine and Coke was a thing, and that's just a tragic thing. So don't pour. Is it a thing? Yeah.
Yeah, there's some cultures that do that. I think it's some South American cultures will drink their wine with Coke and some things like that, or like Fernet and Coke is a thing. But I think that he didn't read the room very well on that one. That first date is not when you ruin your fancy date's bottle of wine. So
yeah,
now it's sad.
No. So Brett, do you guys see a lot of first dates at the pub? Do you guys have any tips on?
We've had some where it's a first date. I don't. Because we're an understaffed production. I don't spend a lot of time there in the evening, and I try, because I know so many people, getting in and out of the door sometimes can be very difficult. If I go on a Saturday afternoon, it might take me 45 minutes to get inside. So I try to be a little scarce whenever the tap room's open for that reason. But I don't have a story about our place, but I one time was at a bar where I was friends with all the bartenders, and I just was sort of sitting there in my own little space, and there was a date next to me. It was a match date kind of place, not a Tinder date kind of place, if you catch my drift. Yeah. And so
I got you.
So these are people who were like looking for a life partner. And so the guy, I mean, at this point I'm a decorated home brewer working on a business plan and everything, and these couples sitting next to me, and the guy's like, he's like, totally mansplaining. Yeah, the hops are what makes it sour. And the woman is like, no, I'm pretty sure that's not the reason. And he's like, no. Look, the hops are what makes it sour. And she's like, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, all right, no, not gonna do this, not gonna. She's on her own date. I shouldn't. I mean, and so I didn't. And they never had another date, I'm sure. And she knew what she was talking about. And the mansplainer still probably has no idea what he's doing, but he probably just drinks New England IPA, and it doesn't really matter.
Was that a dig at New England IPA? I don't know.
No, I mean, I make it, you know, it's like, but like, it's, you know, it's kind of,
It doesn't have the process of a decoction mash, man.
Certainly does not. Although there's a process to New England IPA, you know, it involves lowering the temperature before you add the hops. It's not just like throwing things at the wall.
Yeah.
But it's certainly an easier one to do.
I bet you got some comments.
There's just so much gold here.
Oh, did I? I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do. Sure. Yeah. So, so I would like to hear some of those comments.
I love New England IPA. I make it. I'm happy to make it. I will never stop to make it. But you know, let's not kid ourselves. It's not the most difficult thing.
Oh, I love it.
And I'm not claiming to be the greatest.
So all right, so let's go ahead and sum up what we tasted. So Jake, you tasted a lot of cocoa powder and chocolatey notes, really light body, not so bitter. And we know bitterness comes from the malt. Anyway, so we are starting to kind of put this all together. So before Jake guesses, let's go ahead and touch base with Victoria to see what the audience is saying about this conversation and saying about the beer.
Well, I think the biggest gasp were hopefully to the mansplainer, but they had a lot of good notes and things, and where they agree and where they disagree with Jake is, you know, on the chocolatey notes, definitely they're agreeing with him on those kind of sweet aromatics, agreeing on nuttiness, you know, the lower alcohol, medium low body, you know, kind of drinkability thing they all agree with. Some of the other things they got that Jake didn't pick up on were cereal notes, graham crackers, and just some other sweet aromatics like toffee and whatnot. So a little bit of discrepancy there, but not terribly. A lot of those chocolate notes, a lot of that drinkability that they really enjoyed. And we're going to use that to give away our grand prize. And so that's going to be that $50 gift card to Wild East, as well as that exclusive tasting and exclusive consulting with Jake. And that's going to go to Tyler. Tyler, I'll be reaching out to you and getting in touch so we can get those prizes headed your way. And some of the other things that are coming up that people want to know about is really what style. Go back to that decoction mash because it's a big topic, right? And what styles is that really worth it for? Like, if you could give a couple that's really worth it to do that, when should you use the decoction mash?
Awesome. Thanks, Victoria, and congrats, Tyler. So let's go ahead and bring everyone back. We'll answer that question, and then it will be guessing time. So Brett, would you use the decoction mashing for a New England IPA, or what kind of beers would you use it for?
No, but I know somebody who uses some brews use a step mash for New England IPA, and they do it very well. So I would say anytime you're going to make the Czech styles, I personally do a double decoction for the Czech style beers. And I think for me, any lager gets a decoction. We also use it for our Kolsch. We'll be doing an alt beer on Monday that will get a decoction. I also use it for the Berliner Weiss. It's a no boil Berliner Weiss in the very traditional style. So we pull a decoction, we add hops to that, and then we send that back for one of the mash steps. So it's a very useful thing to me that builds mouthfeel, builds character to the beers that and makes them stand apart a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. It's a fun process, especially when homebrewing. I don't know that I did it a lot when in the commercial brewing land. All right, so Jake, are you ready? Are you ready to guess?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so I'll review the three for you now. Yes, smart man. All right, so let's put this all together. So which of the three descriptions best matches the flavor of the beer that we just described? Is it the dark mild? Is it the English brown? Number two, the English brown. Or is it number three, the American brown? So Jake, what are you thinking? What's your guess?
You know, the participants throwing in the toffee notes and was kind of, you know, one of those things that could have messed me up. I don't disagree with you, but I have to go with my gut. It's the body that's taking me there, and that's cocoa powder. I think it's the dark mild. So that's where I'm sticking with it.
All right. So Brett, can you reveal the mystery beer and tell us a little bit about its origin story?
Yeah. So you're right. It is the dark mild.
Yes.
It was so funny because when we were first starting to build the brewery, somebody reached out to us on our nascent Twitter page and handle and asked us if we were going to do a dark mild. And we're like, haha, that's cute. You know, we're making saison here. We're not going to ever get around to that. And then it came time to actually brew, and we were like, well, what would it'd be good if we can make a beer, a half batch, a 15-barrel batch that would be low in alcohol and light on hops that we could use to propagate the yeast up to a 30-barrel batch. What do you think we should do? Well, it's December 17th. We're going to start brewing like December. Like, what's a perfect winter beer? I'm thinking like, well, in 2015, we had that lovely 2 weeks that we spent in Christmas time in London, and we had a lot of dark mild. And to me, that is the quintessential like holiday season beer. And so I turned to Tyler. I was like, shall we do a dark mild? And he was like, dark mild sounds like a great idea. So we made the dark mild. And then immediately, even during the lockdown, selling it only in crawlers became so popular. We were like, should we make this year round? Sure. So suddenly, not only do I have I have a brown ale that's year round, which I always wanted because I love brown ales, but like it's a low alcohol beer. And we were literally one of the first people in the city to make it. So it's just like we have those people who only drink this beer. And so we'll always have it.
That's great.
I love those like easy drinking, flavorful, but not very boozy. They're great. And you get the additional benefit of being a nice yeast prop. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So as we kind of wrap up, let's check in with Victoria. One last time. I just want to see, how did the audience do and what's going on with you?
Yeah, well, the audience was kind of split between option 1 and 2, so they wouldn't have been much help to Jake, really, if he would have been looking at that, because it would have been a 50-50 split in the first two options. But he did great. And, they got a lot of the tasty notes and had fun. They love that beer. Some of them knew that beer, were really excited. It's like their favorite beer there. So I think we had a winner. I can see why they make it year-round. And then the last question we want to ask is for both participants, for both Jake and Brett, what is your favorite wine and or beer food pairings? If you had to pick one kind of forever, what would you go with?
Ooh, nice. That is a nice kind of wrap-up question. So let's go ahead and bring them back. So Jake, what's your favorite beer and food pairing?
Beer and food pairing. Well, honestly, whatever's in my hand. No, actually, so I love lagers. I've come full circle. I've worked in breweries. I did Belgian style ales, and I love lagers. And so for me, it's really like the simplicity of super crisp, beautiful lager, and like just a good hamburger just makes me so damn happy. And so like. Totally. That's it. Just leave me alone. Just put those two things with me in a room and walk away, and I'm going to be a very happy person for sure.
You're good. How about wine and food pairing? I gotta hear one more.
I always like high-low, and so the easy one that I always recommend is fried chicken and sparkling wine, champagne if you got it, prosecco if you don't, but it is always good. The saltiness of the fried chicken and sometimes the spice is really complementary with the bubbles and the acidity. It's money.
Nice. Love it. So Brett, how about you? What's your favorite wine and food pairing?
I just want to say really quickly, Jake, that it looks like Dram Shop reopened with that excellent burger, and we're going to work on getting some of our Pilsner in there. So I'm going to try to make that happen for you, bud.
Yes.
So for me, it's just really tough. It's really tough. I'm thinking back to a time that I had a West Coast IPA with it was a main lunch with a or maybe it was Peeper. It was definitely one of main brewing companies, like amazing, like Westy type beers. And I had it with a Connecticut style lobster roll. It was such an amazing, like perfect. The beer was so fresh. The lobster roll was so fresh. Like it was just such a perfect pairing. But I could go on with beer pairings all day. I think so there's like a split here for me with a wine and food pairing. And I'm probably I might even mix up. You might be able to correct me here and be like, no, if you try the other one. But like I'm thinking of like a big, bold California Cabernet with a big slice of chocolate cake. And I'm like chocolate cake, chocolate icing, just like a super gushy, like, like multi-layered thing. But I also kind of could go for like a nice medium rare, like maybe a filet with like a Pinot Noir. Or should I reverse those?
No, I think you're the right spot.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I usually drink white wine, just for the record. But those are like, when I think of pairings, that's what I think of.
Sounds good.
Yeah, nothing like it. Oh, I'm hungry now. That sounds amazing. All right, so kind of as we wrap up, Brett, looking forward, what does the next month look like for Wild East?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at some more of the lockdown rules being lifted, so things are going to get more lively, and we have some of our first barrel aged sours coming out. We have one of them's a mix of some of our Brett blondes mixed with a little bit of our barrel aged saison that was all aged on peaches, and then we have another that's a blend of one of our Brett blondes with our Women's Day beer from last year, which was called Hypatia's Wit. It's like a Brettanomyces fermented wit beer. And then we added extra, and these are all barrel aged, so they're kind of sour beers. And then we added a little bit of extra citrus to it. So it's just like this big, like juicy citrus burst. I'm really looking forward to those two bottles coming out in the next like month or so.
Nice. Sounds good. Jake, what do you have going on in the next month or so?
Well, Lindsay, since last time we did this and I botched my beer, we've actually gone live with wine classes at Jake Lewis Wine Services. So those are all live. But most exciting is that I'm starting a masterclass series with my retail partner. And we're doing 4 sessions that discuss in nerdy detail and like really informative detail and drink lots of wine, 3 wines per class. And that's launched. It'll be live on my site and my social media pages tomorrow or tonight. And the first one is May 6th. And it's going to be basically how the super nerds think about wine and why we buy the wines we do, and sort of some inside baseball on how to take that to the shop and the restaurant.
Love it. Love it. You guys are doing such great things. And thank you so much for taking time out of your days to play again, Jake. And Brett, it's a pleasure to see you. This was a really good time. I can't wait till I can get out there and drink some of your beers. So Jake, he's got a bunch going on. Follow him on all of his social media. Check out his masterclass. And of course, Brett, check out Wild East and what they're up to. And I hear that the patio is looking mighty fine as it starts warming up. And audience, of course, thank you guys so much for being here again. It's always a great thing to see you. And for all of you guys in the audience and at home, this summer, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of live, in-person, virtual events. So just stay tuned to what we have coming up. Follow us on our social media channels, and we will be getting some of that info out there. And also make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you are viewing this right now. Just hit the little button, just do it. We are putting out a bunch of this kind of content. So if you had fun today, go ahead and subscribe. And of course, keep tasting in Sample Ox. There are a bunch of breweries in Brooklyn that are in Sample Ox right now. So just continue building your palate while supporting the local breweries in your neighborhood, and also engaging with your community. So thank you guys for being here, and happy tasting.